Welcome back to another installment of Analyst Hour. This is season 2, episode, what are we on, 4 or 5 now?
Five, five,
Five,
I believe. I could be
something
wrong.
like that. And Mike, it is safe to say we had one of the most competitive and most action-packed weekends ASL has seen in a long time. We are filming this post doubleheader weekend where there were 8 games total, and my God, it was warfare. It was warfare.
To
Uh,
say the least.
a lot of upsets. And we talked a lot about last week how we didn't know the sense of every team, if you're talking about, because we only had 2 games under their belt and some people were missing. And now we have 4 games. We've seen everyone kind of through a lot of the situations they're going to be put in throughout the year, whether they're down or going into halftime with the lead. But now that we have a general sense of every team, Mike, before we break down doubleheader weekend, let's go through every team and you tell me what their identity is. So let's start with the Pride.
Yeah, I mean, Pride, I think they have really demonstrated how much AJ meant on those teeny weenies and funky monkeys teams. Not to say that they're not going to be able to find their rhythm, but I mean, like the the funky monkeys went 4-3, but 4-0 with Steven Shaw. Like the teeny weenies, I don't know if they lost to Steven Shaw. Steven Shaw looks and his Pride team look incredibly mortal this year. They're still one of the better teams in their conference, but at the end of the day, they got to be sleeping with one eye open because Steve Shaw is not just going to be able to do it himself. He needs Costa to step up. He needs Pat to be the version of Pat that we saw last season, and quite frankly, neither have happened so far. And honestly, Steve Troy's been great off the bench, but he's only going to do so much.
Yeah, definitely want to hop in there as well. AJ, as of right now, has definitely seemed like the glue for that team. And in his absence, it is quite obvious, especially defensively. I'm noticing that the Pride have a lot of lazy defensive possessions, whether they're trying to rely on their teammates to get a rebound or maybe close out. And I think that's really coming up big in the scorecards and the score sheets. I mean, to see Stephen Shaw be 2-2 at the end of 4 weeks, something has to be off. And now, of course, there is that little asterisk week 1, but that was a shock. Meaning they should have won that game. Could we say I mean, AJ, Stephen, and Pat, it's safe to say I think they're the best trio in ASL history. So I think they would have won week 1. And that's, again, not a spite of Costa at all. It's just they have been a well-oiled machine for a long time. But I think the identity of the Pride going forward is a really offensively gifted team that lacks a defensive identity.
I just want to add one thing to that is that AJ Steve Shaw having AJ allowed Steve to kind of save most of his energy for offense, and now you have Steve having to do literally everything offensively and defensively, and it's probably affected now that he's putting so much effort into defense because he doesn't have AJ to lean on. It's probably affecting his offensive game.
Absolutely. That's a great point. In terms of last week when he was playing against both the Vikings and the Hellkites, he was bouncing around everywhere. I didn't know who he was supposed to guard because whoever had the ball, Steven was there. What about the pack? We definitely been talking about the pack for a while. We didn't really know what we got a sense, but now we have a better sense with Rang's appearance and consistency with his attendance. So you tell me, what are the pack's identity now?
I think the Pack are a far more versatile team than I could have seen coming, where they can really do it all defensively. You have Arvin on the interior, Alex and Sarang or Rang on the perimeter, and offensively, they all have, and even Owen, by the way, Owen Bullinger and his rebounding has been phenomenal. He's been a top 5 rebounder in the entire league,
Yes,
captain or non-captain.
no
It's
doubt.
actually been phenomenal if you've been paying attention to it. And yeah, and offensively, they all have such different skill sets. I understand. I still disagree with it, but after watching them, I understand Alex Secreta's rationale and his trade more because you have Alex who is this primary driver but can shoot if need be. Then you have Rang, who's primary shooter but can drive and play make if need be. And Arvin just does a little bit. Arvin does a lot of the gritty stuff, like the screen setting, the rebounding, the hustling. But he also will shoot some threes, and once in a while he'll try to back someone out in the post. And yeah, and Owen is just, I mean, he's just throwing his body everywhere to get those rebounds. They really complement each other very well. They had a big one over the Hellkites and narrowly lost to the Vikings, who are also a very good team. But I think the Pack are going to be okay.
Yeah, great analysis, Mike. I think it was a good move as well. With the Pack, they are undersized. Owen definitely makes up for it with his rebounding because, God, he is an athletic rebounder. Again, I really want to see Owen go up for second chance points more, but whatever. I think that the Pack's identity is an undersized, versatile team. And I really think the only way this team could lose is getting out rebounded and having a team that is more consistent with their shooting. Now, Rang is a spot up shooter, and Arvin can get hot as well, but it's the consistency because it's make it take it. So you got to be very consistent to do well in this league, and I think that's the only thing that's going to stop them. Now let's jump into the Spartans. Tough weekend to say the least. They went 0-2 this weekend. What are the Spartans' identity?
I'm very confused about the Spartans, how they went from that incredible week 2 performance where they looked like they had the best chemistry in the league to that disastrous doubleheader on Sunday. Granted, they didn't have Captain Nick Resendez in that second game versus the Hatamotos, I want to say. But in that first game against the Billies, I mean, just as a player going into it, I just did not expect them to be that complacent, just settle for that many threes, have that little off-ball movement. Nick Resendez has got to be more aggressive. He is way too talented to be playing the way he is. He is not attacking nearly enough. He's settling. He's deferring to his teammates. It's great when you have Ian and Campbell and Tyler Brawley to defer to, but you've got to be more aggressive. You can't be averaging 5 points a game in this league if you're Nick Resendez. You're just simply because you're too good for that.
Yeah,
So I think that's a big issue. I think Ian's been great. He's not the issue. I actually think I think Campbell has also been great, even though I think he took a little too many threes in the Billy's game. And Tyler and I were awash because both of us were going to get hunted regardless. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very worried about the Spartans. I think it's between them and the Hellkites for the worst team in the league if they don't figure it out very quickly.
I think I got to cut Spartans some slack because yes, they didn't have Nick in the technically their first game against the Hatamotos, but it was the second played game. And they still put up 14 points against the best team in the league without Nick, and that's great. But I do kind of have to say the hard truth, and you might agree with me. And this is kind of piggybacking off the Nick Resendez point. It seems more like Ian's team.
Yep, 100%.
Ian seems, and
100%.
regardless of how they're playing, Ian seems like he cares more. He's being more engaged with his teammates and the game and the opponents. Like, you're so right. Nick Resendez is honestly probably the fourth most gifted guy in the league in terms of athleticism and basketball. And yeah, I want to see him get angry. I want to see him get gritty. I want to see him drive, take good shots. Like, he has such good handles and has such a good sense of the game. There's no reason he shouldn't be putting someone on their ass, like just like breaking ankles out there. And even when he puts some highlight plays up, he does it with such ease. You almost can't, like, it's hard to believe what he would do if he was actually really, really trying. And this was an issue we ran into last year too.
Mm-hmm.
Just the not trying, or not, I shouldn't say not trying, but like not playing aggressive, not seeming like he cares as much as his teammates. And we could be wrong. We could be reading the situation completely wrong. We're not in the locker room. But yeah, I definitely need some more aggression out of Nick Resendez because one, he's the captain, and you got to do that. You got to lead your team, but also because he has no reason not to be making a fool out of 95% of the defenders he's going to be going up against.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what again, I'm not really worried about the Spartans because they can definitely turn it around, and their division is just up for grabs. So I'm not really, if I'm a Spartan, I'm not particularly worried because you know what they're capable of. It's just a matter, is that team going to show up every time? And it's not in particular anyone's fault, but I would like to see more aggression out of Nick going forward.
I'd just like to make a few clarifications. Yeah, one, I'm not questioning Nick Resendez's effort level. I am questioning his aggression. He looks exactly like he did the first 3 weeks on the Honey Badgers, where if he can get back to what he was doing at the end of last season, the Spartans are in good hands. And two, I think a big part of it is Nick is not used to having a player of Ian's level on his team, and I think he almost he feels more inclined to share the wealth, and you should share the wealth in U of Iron, but you've got to take your shots. You got to. It still is your team. If you're Nick, Iron can still be the biggest. Iron's going to be the biggest communicator on that team, regardless. But it is still Nick's team, and he needs to play like it.
Yeah, I mean, going back to last season with Nick, I discussed with him. I think the way scheduling panned out, it was unfortunate, but I think he had like a double header going into like week 8 or week 7, and I told him. He asked me like, "Oh, we're out for playoffs?" I go, "No, like if you win these next 2 games, you're in playoffs." He's like, "Oh, really?" And he had the best 2 games in his ASL career. Unfortunately, he lost the second one, but just to see that he has it in him, and
Yes.
if he, like you, I think you said it perfectly. Like if he turns it on, Spartans are in good hands, great hands. So that's what I definitely need more from him. Let's go to the. You know what? We'll finish out the conference.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Galaxy.
You can go first. I'll let
0-2.
you go first on this one.
The Galaxy shot themselves in the foot this weekend in both games. Not really against the Billies. So I'm going to talk about the second matchup, the Galaxy taking on the Hatamotos, the best team in the league. They have not lost yet. We are searching for that team to be able to put the Hatamotos win streak to rest. And it looked promising when the Galaxy got out to a 9-2 or a 9-1. Needless to say, a very heavy start. Going up 9-2 or 9-1, a 3 can put you in a halftime. And unfortunately, the Galaxy in Knights of Columbus. So I mean, I know you want to just huck up your threes. Got complacent, and they decided to live and die by the 3 ball, and they died by it. They shot themselves in the foot. As a Galaxy, if I were a Galaxy fan or if I was a Galaxy player, I would be incredibly frustrated rewatching that game because you had it. No one on the Hatamotos were hitting their shots. You may not get this opportunity again. No one was hitting their shots. And at first, everything was going the Galaxy's ways, but maybe it was shooter's fatigue or what have you. That's not how the cookie crumbles. Their shots weren't falling. And instead of being smart and conservative and composed like the Hatamotos were and taking your ones and taking your best shots and deciding that, you know what, we're going to kind of put our heads down and slowly but surely work our way back into this game, the Galaxy just decided to huck up half-court shots. And none of them were falling, which is fine. You know, you can't expect to hit your half-court shots or all your threes, especially against a really good team. And the Knights of Columbus environment sucks. We are just recycling each other's breath. It is gross. But they shot themselves in the foot. It is no doubt. The Galaxy are incredibly talented. I don't remember. We probably give them the best draft grade. I'm not particularly sure. I don't remember. And they still are. They are such a talented group of guys, which is why they should be so disappointed in themselves, because it's not necessarily their skill that they lost because of. And it wasn't because the Hatamotos had an incredible game, because they by no means didn't. That was the worst they've ever looked. And they still looked great, but it was the worst they've ever looked. The Hatamotos did it to them. The Galaxy did it to themselves in their second game against the Hatamotos. And obviously, you can't really dawn too much upon that if you're a Hatamotos player, because the skill is there. And sometimes that's the hardest part for teams, to have skill. So they could definitely pick up the pieces, but that's one where you got to be bashing your head in the wall, because that was a frustrating watch as a Galaxy viewer, fan, player. They really did it to themselves. And to not only losing the game because of your decision making, that's bad enough, but passing up an opportunity to beat the best team in the league, that's got to sting a little bit more. In terms of their first matchup against the Billies, I don't think that the Galaxy lost. I think just the Billies won. The Billies came out strong and they finished strong. They ended up winning 21-11. And I don't think the Galaxy were particularly having a bad game by any means. I think the Billies kind of just found their rhythm and never looked back. So week 3 matchup 1 for the Galaxy. I think they didn't lose. The Billies won. But in terms of their second matchup against the Hatamotos didn't really win. I think the Galaxy just lost.
So what I take from that is you say that that victory, the Hatamoto's 21-19 victory over the Galaxy, it says more about the Galaxy blowing the lead than the Hatamoto's overcoming the lead.
It says a lot about both, but I think there's two exclamation points with the Galaxy losing that one. Now, like I said, they're a very skilled team, and they're going to be able to pick up the pieces. But I hope that they can look back and learn from this loss, because they had no excuse to lose that game. They had no excuse. Uh, just the hucking up threes were just brutal, and sometimes your threes don't fall, and that is okay. That's part of the game. But whereas Jack Curtin got the sense that stuff wasn't falling for him, and he shifted his game, and the whole team shifted their game to get the easy buckets, search for a good shot instead of trying to make one, and taking what the game gave you. They came back by getting their ones, and the Galaxy were just forcing on that one. Like I said, it's one game. So I don't think, even though I'm reaming them out over doubleheader weekend when we're talking about their identity as a whole team, I don't think it attributes to their whole identity as a team. We'll have to see for the remainder of the season, but that would leave a really bad taste in my mouth. Now I'll get to the positive about the Galaxy as their whole identity. Highly skilled team who have upper echelon accolades and attributes in both ends of the game, meaning offensively and defensively. You have Connor and Matt, who are two highly highly acclaimed, and both have some hardware in this league for individual accolades. You have Dan Gerges, who's coming off of, even though he didn't play this weekend, but sorry, I'm talking about the whole identity. You have Dan Gerges, who's coming off a fourth man of the year award. And you have Luke Pratty, who has, three Fat Mans of the year, maybe even a most improved.
Yep.
So yeah, they have to be the team with the most hardware, and for good reason. They all deserve the awards they get, which is why they got to look at each other and be like, we're not a 1-3 team. Let's figure this out, because I have faith in them. I think they will. So I think their identity is like a highly achieved, highly skilled team that just hasn't got their system yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
guess.
once they do, I don't think they'll look back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there. I mean, they're 1-3, but they lost 21-18 to Stephen Shaw's team, the Pride, where they also had two good leads in that game, and they lost 21-19 to Jack Curtin's Hatamoto's, where they had big leads in that. Like, they could so easily be 3-1 right now. So they just it had the bounces haven't gone their way. Obviously, they've been very complete, playing kind of like the Celtics, where they get a lead, they take their foot off the gas, and now you lost the game. I think the good news for both them and the Spartans is that both those teams are 1-3, and the two teams ahead of them, the Pack and the Pride, are only 2-2. The West is wide open for all of them, so they all should really have their heads up. And there's positives for all four of those teams to really draw from, despite all the negatives that we've gone over as well.
Yes. That will zoom over to the other conference. We just talking about them, so let's do it again. Let's talk about the Hatamotos. Again, they're now 4-0, coming off of a 2-0 doubleheader weekend. What's their identity?
Their identity is having the best pick and roll in ASL history with Jack Curtin and Carter Brzezinski, but there's so much more than that. I mean, what Nick Germano and Cole Chingris are doing to support that dynamic, but I think that dynamic duo, I have not seen a dynamic duo run the league in that fashion. Like when you had the teeny weenies and the funky monkeys, that was all three of them basically doing their part. That dynamic duo of Jack Curtin and Carter, they play so well off of each other. They complement each other so well. They have excellent chemistry. You think they'd been playing together for 3 years. They always seem to know where each other are on the floor. And to be complemented by Cole Chingris, a Defensive Player of the Year nominee, who has one of the better mid ranges in the ASL, which is not very
He has
talked
a
about.
sneaky good mid range.
He really hits his mid range. He hustles. Cole is a perfect complement to them. And Nick Germano is kind of just a smaller, obviously less shooting touch Cole, where you can plug Nick in. This is a quote from Nick Germano himself. It's that you don't necessarily he's not the most skilled player in the league, but you hate to play against him. And that is honestly a great summary of Nick Germano. He's like Pat Bev. Like, he's going to get out there and he doesn't need to touch the ball, and his mark is going to be left on the game with his intensity, his defense, his pick setting, his rebounds. He has a body. He's not the biggest in the league, but he has a good frame. That they're just a well-oiled machine. Jack Curtin deserves all the credit in the world, considering this is his first ASL experience. No matter how talented you are, I mean, like there's been players that have been very talented that have come into this league not knowing what they got themselves into and struggled mightily. And Jack has just done the absolute opposite. Great draft selection in Carter, who his IQ and his IQ and his knowledge of where to be on the floor just gets better and better. I mean, he was the most improved nominee last year. I think he could be this year. He just get his IQ, because when you have that build, you're that tall, and you don't have the best shooting touch. All you can do is understand the game better, read the game better, and that is what he does season after season. It is incredible to watch as a fan and terrifying to watch as a competitor in their conference.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, the Hatamotos, we say this all the time. I mean, they're just well-oiled machine. They are always on the same page with each other. Hats off to all of them. They all pull their weight perfectly. They all know their role. And we talked about this. I'm gonna give a nod to Jack as a captain really quick. And the same thing when we said about Nick Resendez a few weeks ago. His comfortability with getting the fourth man out there, even though Nick benched himself, which to me is still, I mean, that's like Mother Teresa Gandhi level of activism, in my opinion.
That chills, as you said.
Yeah, chills. But I'm gonna give a nod to Jack for having trust in and Nick gets probably the most minutes as a fourth man. When he's actually the fourth guy on the team. I'm not talking about like Baraldi, who's had to start a few times, or Ian, who
Or
no,
Owen.
he gets more minutes than Ian probably. But Carter's willingness to take a seat, or Cole's willingness to take a seat and let Nick have a ton of minutes out there, that's got to feel good for Nick that his teammates are behind him, but it's got to feel even a little bit better that his captain's behind him and having faith in him. This is just a weird thing. I've never seen them discuss about subs, to be honest. I've never seen Jack point his finger and say, do this, do that, which is good to know that, or at least from the outside of that, it's happening in the inner workings of the team. It just sounds like they all want each other to succeed. They have faith in all of each other, and they, for the most part, they're a very good attending team. I think Cole's the only player who's missed a game so far. But these captains need to learn that availability is the best ability. And you got to look at some teams who show up the most, and those are usually the ones with the most success in this league. And yeah, the Hatamotos, you said it, are the team to beat. And it's going to be fun to watch how the rest of their season pans out.
Yeah. I guess one last thought is that not only by using Nick Germano playing good minutes, now you're also dealing with a well-rested Carter Brzezinski or Cole Chingers out there a majority of the game, which just makes them all the more terrifying.
Great point. Let's talk about the Billies, who start off this year 0-2. We put our analyst caps on and we said the Billies need to worry. And they need to blow it up, and they need to try something new. And it looks like they did, because they went 2-0 against the Spartans and the Galaxy. And I have to double check this, but I believe they had the highest points for and points against. I'm looking at it right now. I don't see the stats particularly in front of me. I was looking at the scores. It's a no-brainer. They have the highest points for and points against differential in the league, so they're obviously doing something right. What do you think about the Billies now?
I think the play of Ryan Cadigan, I mean, this has happened numerous seasons where Ryan consistently starts slow in the season. He has to get his act together, but once he does, there's not much you can do to stop him. And it's great news for the Billies that moment happened right before doubleheader weekend, because Ryan looked as good as he's ever looked in both of those games. Z also, I mean, Z is one of the better post players in the league, and he had been missing a lot of shots those first two games that you don't expect him to miss, and those were falling consistently. His hustle, when you combine that hustle, effort level, athleticism all in one, I mean, what are you going to do about Nick Zelanskas? He's all over the place on both ends of the floor. Him and Ryan complement each other so well. There's not really a team with twin towers, kind of like the Billies. And then you have you as the guard, who was one of the league leaders of assists, gets them in their spot, kind of organizes the offense. And when I'm out there, I guess there has to be one player out there who's paying attention to me, which allows them to do their stuff in the post. So really, it's all starting to come together. I mean, you still have to have some question marks just because of how those first 2 weeks went, and who knows, the Billies just got hot. at the right time. Who knows if Ryan can sustain this play? I mean, history would say he can, but he needs to clearly the Billies need it for them to be able to win like that. So still a lot of questions, but also a lot of answers. And Billies fans are obviously feeling much better than they did prior to Sunday.
Absolutely. I think, Michael, that was a great, you really went through all the whole team. Yeah, that's another thing I think we need to talk about in terms of doubleheader weekend, right? Because if you caught, say, the Galaxy or Spartans went 0-2, even though they played 2 games, that was just one day. You could have caught them on a cold day. With the Billies, who went 2-0, that could have been a hot day for the Billies. So we really need to apply that scope to both ends of the win lose binary right now. And yeah, I think you said it well that they did switch it up, and I'm telling you, I'll take off my analyst cap, put on my player cap. It feels different out there. I'm gonna take that off and put the analyst one back on. It looks different out there. They're a lot more active, a lot more engaged. The hustle is definitely there. Ryan Cadigan looks so much more locked in, so much more competitive. He really turned it on, and you know what you're going to get out of Zelanskis. And unfortunately, you didn't get a ton of minutes against
Spartans are a
really both.
matchup,
Like
right?
honestly, really both. But you got a lot more against the Galaxy. Like I as an analyst, I'm going to say this: Michael Goldsmith has been playing his best basketball in terms of, maybe it's not showing up on the score sheet, but I'm confident that Michael Goldsmith has been playing his most smart, mature, methodical games of basketball, because when he is out there with his fresh legs, it is apparent. You know it. He's the one who stretched the floor. He goes to the empty space, or I should say the open space. He knows where to drag his defender and where to be. And when times where Zelanskis and Cadigan are, getting closer to empty and can't really crash the boards, Michael's the first one there. And I'm excited for the opportunities Michael going forward, because I want him to show those things up on the stat sheet, and I'm confident that he will. But yeah, Billies, they are you could have caught them on a hot day. So they, I guess, are the most unanswered team in terms of identity, but it's looking good for them. Vikings coming off another 2-0 weekend. What do you think about the Vikings, Mike?
Hard to have many criticisms of the Vikings at this point. As I said, I'm going to say I don't know how they lost to the Hellkites week 1. I still got to watch that game. It's Colin is playing his best basketball ever, and it isn't even close. And he has had a bunch of terrific seasons in this league, but he's averaging a double-double. He's efficient. But beyond all that, the way he is orchestrating this team, it is incredible what you have. He is using AJ so well. It's crazy. And good shout out to AJ for being bought in. Obviously, he wasn't thrilled to be separated from his
He's thrilled now.
From his counterparts. Yeah, but and he was the X factor in their win. Obviously, Colin carried the scoring load, but he was the X factor in their win versus the Pride. But yeah, shout out to AJ for being bought in. Shout out to Colin for taking that risk. A lot of people were questioning it, like, why would you take him then? You really think he's going to do? It has panned out perfectly. He's Colin's best first-round draft pick ever, and it's showing up. Having Ian and George, where you have, and we kind of talked about this on the sidelines, where you have Ian and George are very similar players, but Ian has the edge offensively, and George has the edge defensively. So if you're let's say you're down like 18-13, not that this happened to them, you put Ian in for the offense. But if you're trying to protect a lead, you can have George. And both of them are so selfless, they don't give a shit. They just want to win. And they know, like Ian knew at the end of that game versus the Pride, when the Pride were storming back and Ian wasn't hitting his shots and was playing sloppy. He wanted George out there.
Turnovers.
And Grant, Ian's had an amazing season. Like, I know I just mentioned it, but Ian's had a great season so far. He had a rough stretch at the end of that game. But he was happy to sub himself out and get George out there to put a body out there. They just want to win.
That's what it takes to win, too.
Yeah, they're showing up, and their commitment to winning is so evident, and that's why they're 3-1. And it's great basketball. Obviously, when you have a superstar like Colin, who is really on and entering a new level of his game, and I don't know how many seasons he's played, but it's another level for him. And it's just, yeah, they're a fun team to watch. They very well could pose a challenge to the Hatamotos. Those two teams face off week 7. That game, in all likelihood, will be for the first round bye. So we'll have to see what happens. But they really, it is tough to think of many criticisms of that Vikings team right now.
I perfectly said I'm not even gonna jump in.
Mhm.
We got to save the best for last, though. You reamed them out last week. They also had a pretty tough weekend for doubleheader weekend, going 0-2. Michael, what what's up with the Hellkites? What's their identity?
I mean, they really they put up a hell of a fight versus the Packers. So I lost 22-20. Our game was going on at the same time as that game, and I have not had a chance to watch it. But they put up a hell of a fight against the Pack, who, as I've gained respect for as after seeing that at full strength. I just their chemistry is not there. Not that it's anything personal, but just a lot of standing around, a lot of just it's almost like watching three. You'd think you're watching Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, and I don't know another superstar.
Carmelo Anthony.
They just take ISOs every single time, and you don't have the personnel to be doing that. I don't get it. Dennis is the only one who plays with his head in his shoulders and moves the damn ball. I mean, Trottier has been amazing on defense. Rishi, he's also a good perimeter defender. I had after seeing that cookies and cream season, I had higher expectations for Rishi. I don't think he's playing to his skill level, and I don't know why that is. But I think I think Rishi is better than he's been, and that is a big part of why that team is struggling. But it's way deeper than just Rishi. They're just again they this happened. I didn't see much of that game versus the Packers. They put up a hell of a fight, but literally the same thing I was talking about the week prior against the Hatamotos. They showed it against the Pride. They started out hot. They had an early lead. As soon as the Pride stormed back, you knew that game was over. You knew they wanted to go home. You knew they were done. The body language, I can't say it enough. You don't see players with their heads down and their shoulders dropped in the ASL ever. I don't know what is going on with that team, but it's just I hate to rip on them 2 weeks. I honestly hate to shit on the same team 2 weeks in a row. Like you saw, I shit on the Pack a few weeks ago. I'm a Pack fan now, but the Hellkites and what could they do to win anyone over? They're just not fun to watch, and they don't look like they're having fun either.
Yeah, I think that what the Hellkites got to do is they got to lock themselves in a room and not come out until they have a system, and it needs to be a candid conversation. Um, get in front of a whiteboard, draw some plays up, draw up a strategy. I think you're 100% right. I think individually they're a very skilled team, and I did watch a little bit of that Pack and Hellkite game. Unfortunately, it was cut off short because we had to start our game, but you see them when maybe they run their ISOs, or you just look at them individually, and they have no excuse to be doing this poorly. They got to look around and say, guys, I'm sure we all want to win here, but we got to morph into a team, because right now we're just players. They look the least like a team out there, and they really need to draw something up. They need to get a system. They maybe need to get some few things off their chests. They really need to talk this out. They lack a lot of communication. And even during the timeouts, they all just go and get their waters, and maybe they'll have a little bit of conversation here and there, but engage with each other, because I'm sure they're all frustrated with being 1-3. But it's got that 1-3 has to hurt even more because of how good they are. And I think they have one of the most in-depth teams in the ASL right now. I mean, snagging both Dennis and Trottier, that is ridiculous. I mean, that's up there for the Pat and Costa in terms of depth. So they have no excuse to be down this low. They need to look at each other and say, we all want to win here. Let's figure this out. Let's put our heads down. Let's put our heads together and figure this out, because we should not be 1-3.
Yeah, and on top of that, I basically called them quitters 2 weeks in a row. And the thing is all of them individually, all four of them, Rishi, Trottier, Dennis, and Pete, want to win so badly. They that's the thing. They all want to win in this league, which is why it almost is even more shocking to see them just put their heads down and quit, because they're not quitters, but they're playing like it. But they have winning mentalities, individually. We've seen it all from them in the past. Even I guess Trot's a rookie, but you can clearly see it, and all of them have showed it. It's just collectively, I think they see one player drop their shoulders and all their shoulders are down, and all right, let's go home on to the next one. Maybe we'll be 2-3.
Well, Mike, we can't just sit here and trash them because complaining without proposing an answer is called whining. So we we're definitely gonna we definitely got our fair share of critiquing them, but let's prescribe some of our own ideas. What system should they draw up to be a successful team?
Maybe run one pick and roll. Like I haven't seen them run a pick and roll yet. And you have bodies like Dennis, you have bodies like Trotter, even Pete's a good body. Pete actually had himself a game against the Pack, by the way. He deserves a shout out for that after the issues with seeing the floor. He came out against the Pack and he put up 2 points, which for a fourth man in this league, that's a lot. So shout out Pete. But yeah, I definitely run some pick and rolls. I mean, use your when you have Dennis and Trot as your starters. One of them is probably going to have a size mismatch in this league. Take advantage of it. Like, I know neither of them are the tallest, but both of them have very wide frames. Both of them are athletes. Like, take advantage of that. If you're Rishi, you got to smarten up in your shot selection. You got to be more of a facilitator. You can't just do a really nifty dribble move and take a three every time if they're not dropping. And that's what we've seen for the most part. I want to see Rishi be more aggressive, similar to Nick Resendez. And yeah, just that's really all I got in the drawing board. I don't know. What you have any solutions in mind?
Well, yes, I do. I think Rishi's done a great job shooting. Sure, I haven't watched a ton of the Hellkite minutes, but of the Hellkite minutes I have watched, I've actually been very impressed by his shooting. So maybe we're getting different. One of us has to be wrong, and we'll
Could be.
I guess
It could be me. I haven't seen a ton of it. I only.
I haven't either. So maybe we're just getting in at different points. But if are the Hellkites, you got to look around. You're 100% right. You have size and athleticism and speed. That is pretty hard to match up against. How about some cuts to the basket? Simple. Simple. If you shoot it, let's crash the boards. I mean, most teams either have size or they have speed. These guys have both.
Yeah.
So get in there, cut to the basket. Don't settle for bad shots. Look for each other, hear each other, feel each other. Like, cut to the basket, set some pick and rolls, set a pick. Like, you don't need to just, it's kind of like this. Like, all three of them, one gets the ball, tries to dribble in and can't really do anything. So they kick it out to person number two. Person number two tries to get something going and either shoots and misses it or can't get anything going and just passes it to number three. Like, they need to work as a team. They really need to cooperate. And those are my big things. You have speed and you have size. Look around. Know the gifts you guys have as a team. Cut to the basket. Get a pick going. They can pretty much score from any end of the floor. Yes, they definitely lose their efficiency beyond the arc, but anyone can hit a three. So if they can definitely maneuver to draw something up, find the open shot, or even just set someone up on the post, like it's frustrating. I'm not a Hellkite hater like you are, but
Hater's a strong word.
Okay. Hellkite.
I'm closer to a hater than a fan, but I'm definitely not either.
Okay. All right. But yeah, I'm frustrated with the Hell. If I am a Hellkite, I got to be frustrated. Now that we have their identities, let's do our biggest takeaways from doubleheader weekend. We're going to talk about matchup 1, Billy's Galaxy, Hanamoto Spartans, Hellkites Pack, Vikings Pride. What were your biggest takeaways from those? If you have any questions about stats, I have them up. So
yeah, again, by the way, this isn't chronological order. This is the order that the schedule had it listed in, just for no confusion.
Yes.
I guess I'll start with the Billies. Well, there's some of those games you watched, I didn't. Some of those I didn't. I guess I'll start with the Billies Galaxy game. Kind of that, as you touched on earlier, the Galaxies didn't play that bad. The shots they were taking, unlike in the Hanamoto's games we'll touch on, the shots they were taking were open shots. They were just missing them. They got a lot of good looks that game. Not many of them dropped. There's not much you could do about that. Their defense was definitely not what it should be. Matt Schuerk definitely had himself a challenge in out rebounding Nick Zelanskis, where most of the time he gets any board he wants with ease, and he's not used to that. And yeah, Connor Fu just missed a lot of threes that you normally expect him to hit. And on the flip side, Luke actually played fairly well. I mean, Luke really didn't have much of a positive nor impact on that particular game. He had a great game against the Hatamotos, but in that game he was basically a non-factor. And if you look at the Billies, I mean, yeah, it was Ryan and Nick you were already playing very cohesive off of that win versus the big win versus the Spartans, and it showed. And there wasn't Ryan was hitting a lot of shots that you see the Galaxy putting their hands in their head, like, what are we supposed to do? And they were right, because they played incredible defense on a lot of those shots, and it was just better offense by Ryan and in some parts by Nick Solanskis. You facilitated well. I came in, I got a nice hustle rebound.
You actually had 3 rebounds. You out rebounded
three.
me.
Two of them fell in my lap. I had one nice hustle rebound there. And again, most importantly, what I do is if you have one person paying attention to me, like that means you're not doubling Nick or Z. So that's really the most important thing I can do, is help them thrive. And that's what happened. And that's why, yeah, the Billies really just were the better team, and they got the win because of it. What's another matchup? Unless you have any thoughts?
I just want to chime in, is like what I did say when we talk about the Galaxy and the Hanamotos, which I kind of already touched up on, so we don't really need to do that next matchup discussion. But I said the Galaxy losing spoke a louder volume about them than the Hanamotos coming back. It's a similar thing I'm going to apply to the Billies versus Galaxy game. Like, I think that spoke more about the Billies than it did the Galaxy, because I think the Billies won. The Galaxy didn't lose. They did not have a bad game. The Hanamotos and Spartans, if you're curious about how that ended, that was a 21-14 win. Keep in mind, their captain didn't play. I want to jump in really quickly.
Please do. I haven't seen that.
Again, this is another hats off to Ian. We did say it's looking like his team, and it's showing again. He put up 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, 0 blocks, but he did get into turnover trouble with 4. Prentice put up 2 points, 9 rebounds, so he's really doing his job. He had 4 steals and 2 blocks. So great job, Prentice. And Beraldi put up 6 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. I mean, Prentice and Beraldi, this duo, it's got to feel great if you're a Spartan, because they step up whenever their number is called. It is so impressive. And that's why we'll get into it later during the novelties part of this of the episode. Is like, Beraldi's the front runner for pretty much any award that he's qualified for. I'm really impressed with them. So that was my biggest takeaway. Even though the Hanamotos won, they should have won. They arguably should have won by a greater margin. But I was more impressed by the Spartans' play than the Hanamotos between that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna I'll let it. I didn't see any of that game nor review the stats. Obviously, well, all I know is it was another vintage performance from Jack and Carter. But I'll leave it at that. I think that's good analysis on that one.
Yeah, we talked about the Hellkites pack, so it's not really important. And then the Vikings and Pride.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy. Kirkpatrick having an MVP season, 12 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 4 turnovers. He led his team in every stat. Really impressive. Really hard to do.
Pull the Jack Curtin.
Pull the Jack Curtin. But we got to talk about Stephen Shaw. You know, we dedicate a lot of time praising Stephen, and rightfully so. But Stephen's been struggling. Granted, I haven't seen a ton of his games, but to be 2-2, you have that asterisk week 1, which I previously touched on. But they're losing games they should win. So I think we also gotta apply that to Stephen and the Pride, because we praise them so much, and we probably, if I were a betting man, I bet we'll be talking about them late August. So
yeah,
right. So let's talk about it. The Vikings, again, they won a great game, but the Pride were struggling. They were playing antsy. Stephen was everywhere. It didn't seem like, and this could be wrong, his actions could be interpreted as he didn't trust his teammates, or as he trusted himself most and really wanted to be wherever the ball was. Which, in my opinion, the latter is pretty understandable. But yeah, what do you think about the Pride versus the Vikings? It was a close game. The Pride almost came back and closed it out, but they ultimately didn't. Does this speak more about the Pride or the Vikings, this matchup?
I think it speaks more about the Vikings, but it's not like you can totally write off what it means for the pride. Um, I think very highly of both Costa and Pat as players, and they have simply not given Stephen Shaw the help he needs, and he doesn't need a lot of it. So they both really have got to step up, especially Costa, because we have seen Costa just be unstoppable at times. We've seen him outplay
Costa
Cap.
actually had, not to stop you in your tracks, I'm looking at the stats. Costa had an incredible game against the Vikings.
Well, I watched the end of that game and I didn't see it, but he must have started hot, and I believe it because
He
that's
had
what he
6
does.
points, 9 rebounds, 0 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and 0 turnovers.
Well, towards the end of that game, it almost felt like if anyone shot it and it wasn't Steven, it wasn't going in. And even when Steven shot it, the Vikings defense was playing so smart. There'd usually be 2 hands in his face, and he was ultimately going to miss. And there was just not much he could have done. I mean, the defense of the Vikings was just incredible. AJ personally guarded Steven a lot of those times, but Steven has never seen the ASL because he had AJ on his team. And AJ, he probably knows Steve's game better than anyone else, and he showed it, and he got under his skin. He was face guarding him, and Steve Shaw, he was visibly showing his frustrations for the second time this season. You haven't seen that. Like, the first one,
Probably third time overall, second time this season.
you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. The first one, I probably would have too. That was kind of an anomaly, but I mean, you see him throw. If I'm the Vikings and I see Steve Shaw after a score chuck the ball off the wall, I'm gonna be stoked. Like, wow, we are under Steve Shaw's skin right now. Like, that has got to be such a confidence boost. So, I mean, I love him showing emotion. I love him being mad that he's losing. But maybe just for your own team's sake, try to bottle it up and use it as fuel more than show your frustrations to your opponent. Um, that's really my biggest criticism of Steve Shaw, because he really hasn't played bad. He's just been double covered, and there's not much he can do, and he's not getting enough help. And the
Yeah.
Vikings, I already gave the Vikings their flowers earlier for.
Yeah, I think in terms of these past 2 games, I'm sorry, with Vikings versus Pride, a few things with Steven. You talked about his emotes of, throwing the ball at the wall. And he also put his hands on his knees and shook his head. And that shows, like, with throwing the ball at the wall, that shows anger. But shaking your head, I mean, that shows helplessness. Like, that is defeat. That is defeat and an emote. Like, that's like a Tom Brady, like the Tom Brady when he's sitting there with his head down.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about? Like, that goes up there. I mean,
yes.
that pose just reeked defeat and helplessness. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely got a sting. Welcome, Steven. Welcome. This is how we all feel when we play against you. So, yeah, it's not a fun feeling. But I do think Steven has been spoiled, right? Because his team, they were all such close friends. They all knew each other's game well, and they were always on the same page. That's not the case this year. I think Steven really needs to switch his identity as a captain going forward. I think he needs to call huddles, tell them what to do. He never really had to do that in these past few seasons because they all knew what to do. And Steven really needs to step up as the emotional leader of this team. And I think he needs to, call huddles, draw something up. I'm sure Troy, Costa, and Pat would love to hear it from you. And that's not me calling into question his leadership, but rather I want to see it be applied to this situation. I hope I articulated that correctly.
Yes. And also Steve Troy has been a bright spot on that team too.
Yes.
With his
Yeah,
play.
no, Steven's been great.
As the last pick in the draft, what more can you ask for?
He's playing teeny weedy Stephen Troy ball.
Yes.
Now we kind of talked a lot about matchups too, but one we have not talked about is Vikings Pack. Obviously, the Vikings came out on top. What do you think about that one?
I wish I remembered it better, but what I do remember is that the Pack, they lost that game, but their heads should remain high because I don't remember what the lead was. I want to say it was 13-5, 13-6, and they battled back. They did the opposite of what the Hellkites do, and they fought they looked at it. Shit, we're down big. Let's play even harder. Let's ramp it up. This game is not over. They battled back. They took the lead in a game that they looked at the beginning they had no business even being close in, and they should be proud about. Like, I'm not big on holding your head high after a regular season loss, but if there's one that you should, it's that one. They lost 21-18. very easily. If they took their foot even this much off the gas, that could have been a 21-10 victory. They deserve credit for that. That's really, I know, it was another amazing game from Colin. Alex had a game. Rang has been shooting very well. It's awesome that he's a full-time player now. It's great that all worked out, and he is one of the better captain or non-captain three-point shooters in the league, and he showed it. And that helped, that when you're down big and you have a shooter like Rang on your team, I mean, it's in the NBA, it's 2 and a 3, where in the ASL it's a 1 and a 2. A 2 is twice. I mean, I know this is obvious, but it's twice as many points as a 1. So when you have a 3-point shooter, it's even more important in the ASL, and it shows you can slice those deficits even better. And they should keep their heads high. And obviously, the Vikings still, they went up big. They faced a lot of adversity, and they closed the deal, and that's all that matters for them. So I've given them enough flowers, and they deserve it.
Yeah, I loved it. You really hit everything. We did talk about the Billies versus Spartans, and we talked about the Galaxy Hatamotos a lot. What about the Hellkites Pride? That was a 21-11 victory for
I
the.
already, I feel like I already gave my spiel about that one. I'll let you take this one.
I really don't remember it, if I'm going to be honest.
I mean,
So
yeah, it was the Hellkite started at like 6-2, and then in a blink of an eye, it's 11-6 Pride, and that's really all I remember from there. And the Pride closed it
never
out.
looking back. Okay, well, that concludes the analysis. But Mike, we always have the fun novelty section part of the episode, so this will be that. There have been a lot of questions surrounding when we do our ladders posts. We did a lot this year, last year, and we will be obviously doing them this year. And depending the time you're watching this, you may have already seen the ladders, but a lot of people are curious how we do the voting system, because we'll see last year there was like 21 votes, 18 votes, and people want to understand our system. So
There
we
was
definitely
outcry.
have transparency there. What we do, and this year we're only doing the votes between myself, Arvin, and Michael. And we are only doing top 3, where I think last year we did top 5, but I think we had more analysts casting votes last year, and that's why the numbers were more. But right now we're doing top 3. And what we do is we will tell each other, we will essentially cast our votes for people, right? So in terms of MVP, each person gets 3 people to vote for. And depending on your first place vote or your second or your third place vote, that's as many votes. Each position is worth, a certain amount of votes. So first place is worth 3 votes, or second place is 2 votes.
Third is 1.
1 vote. Thank you. Jesus. So for example, I mean, this is pretty obvious, and you'll see it out there. When we did our MVP vote, right? My personal MVP votes. I mean, you won't see my personal, but you'll get it. I have Jack Curtin as my first, so I'm giving him 3 votes. I had Colin Kirkpatrick as my second. He's getting 2 votes. And then I voted for Alex Pisacreta, which is 1 vote. Michael, if you consent to me sharing your vote.
I do consent.
Okay, great. I believe Michael casted first place, so 3 votes for Jack Curtin.
Correct.
Colin Kirkpatrick, number 2, so he had 2 votes, and then Stephen Shaw 1. Stephen Shaw has 1 vote. We'll keep Arvin's vote.
Stephen Shaw 3, but he has 1 vote. But yes, just to clarify.
Yes, and then so if you see a player has 9 votes on these ladders next week, that means that they had a clean sweep first. It was a unanimous decision for them to be favorited for that award, essentially. So the awards this year are going to be obviously MVP. We have most improved. We have Depoy. We have rookie of the year. We have fourth man. And then, of course, we have the role player of the year, which is essentially like the second best player, the best draftee.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, let's get into both. We don't need to share our exact votes to keep it simple. We do have your name to clear when we get to one certain, and we do have to be transparent about one particular person who slid their way into the ladder. But yeah, so in terms of MVP, why did you vote for Jack Curtin as number 1?
I mean, simply, he's been the best offensive and arguably defensive player on the best team in the league. It was honestly a no-brainer. when you'll, as you probably saw on the stats post, Jack Curtin's media flick was there 3 times, and he's up there number one, number two, a lot of them, and he's on a 4-0 team. It's a no brainer. There's no argument you can make against Jack Curtin being one right now.
Yeah, I agree. He's hogging everything, the wins in every stat. For the rest of these, I just want you to pick one of your votes, whether if it's the first, second, or third place, and defend it. Okay, because we disagreed later into the voting, but so let's go to Depoy. Reveal who you casted for one of your. I'll reveal.
Do you have them? Because I'm recording on my phone, so.
Who we all voted for, or just
yeah?
I don't have we all voted.
I think I remember. I remember well. Yeah, I remember who I voted for. Okay.
I casted one of my votes, or sorry, I'm not going to reveal like the exact amount of votes I casted, but one of the people I nominated on the podium was for Matt Schuerk. I think he's one of the most difficult, or I'll say one of the best on-ball defenders in the league, maybe in ASL history, and he puts up the defensive numbers as well with the rebounds, steals. He hasn't had a block yet this season, but we know that's coming. And I think that's a dying art in terms of awarding the Depoy, because we talked about with Sean Bradshaw, it's kind of the same effect with him. Like, because being hard to score on doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, people often overlook you when it comes to the Depoy noms, but I don't want anyone overlooking Matt Schuerk, because even though he doesn't have the steals or the blocks really averaging a steal a game is pretty good, but I think he's one of the best on-ball defenders in ASL history. So I casted a vote for him.
Yeah, and I'm going to shout out a vote that I casted for a fellow Billy of mine, Nick Zelanskis, who really, I kind of said it earlier, but when you have that frame and you're putting that kind of effort in, the defense, it's going to come. Like, you're going to be a top 3 defender in this league, and so far he has been. He has the numbers to back it up too. And he's guarding a lot in many cases, even as the non-captain on the team. He is guarding that best player on the other team, and he's playing the best defense. So it's hard to make an argument against him being in your top 3.
We can head over to most improved. This one I think is going to come down to 2 close people. But one of the votes I casted for is Tyler Beraldi. Tyler Beraldi, I think, is the epitome of the kid who has stepped up, and I think he's been nominated 3 times.
If he gets nominated, this will be his 4th.
This will be his 4th time if he actually gets a nomination at the end of the year, and this also could be his year to take it home. He is in a situation where his number is called on a lot, and he is ready, and he answers every time. He's putting up a little bit over 3 points a game, a little bit over 4 rebounds a game, which is a lot for someone who is a guard and shouldn't really be in the paint that often. He averages a half a steal, and he hasn't had a turnover yet. Does that make sense? I guess so. But I casted a vote for Tyler Beraldi is on my podium. That's how I'll conclude it.
This is for most improved player.
Yes.
All right. I guess I will shout out Stephen Troy, who has really, again, you have to look way past the numbers to see what Stephen Troy does. He is an above average defender in this league. He was the last pick because last season, not only he didn't really show up very much, but he was pretty disappointing on both ends of the floor. There's no disputing it. He was very lost out there. He wasn't even guarding his man very well. And to come out this season, I don't want Stephen Troy to guard me. I know that's a matchup I'm going to have to face. His active hands, he kind of has the Prince Zuko hands now, where he's always going for that ball, and it's hard to dribble on him. He has a good frame, so you can't back him down. His effort level is as high as it's ever been. And even on offense, if he is fine, there's been 2 or 3 times now where he's in, they call it the dunker spot. Obviously, we can't really call it in the ASL, but he's in that right place at the right time, where he's just, if Pat or Steve Shaw drives by their man and someone helps, Steve Troy, regardless, is going to be wide open in that spot, and he has hit those layups when they find him. There's been some great feeds coming to him too to help him there. But yeah, Steve Troy has really he's shown that he probably should not have been the last pick in the draft.
I see. Fourth man, um, someone who's on my podium is Ian Hale. Now, Ian Hale, if he starts the next game with a fully staffed team, he becomes ineligible to be a fourth man. He is officially a starter and is locked in. So, Colin, if you're listening to this, if you start Ian, I think you are robbing him
No.
fourth man nom. Even if you bench Ian for the first play and then put him in the second play, I think that makes more sense. But Ian is on my podium because I think him between this year and last year is night and day. And I think he is probably one of the most talented fourth men in terms of, putting the ball in the hoop, distributing the ball, rebounding. Defense is lackluster, but you didn't draft him for that. So he's on my podium.
Yeah, and for mine, I'm going to say someone who I shouted out earlier who really doesn't get talked about enough, and that is Owen Bollinger, who has basically done everything but score the ball, but not many fourth men are that excellent at scoring anyway. I mean, as I said, he's a top 5 rebounder in the league as a whole. Just his vertical, his builds are very good for that. He's a good on-ball defender. He doesn't take any dumb shots, but it's almost to a fault where, like, when you get a rebound and the hoop's in front of you and it's on a management, you put the ball back up and you're just going to bring your game to another level. But Owen has really he's just been awesome. You can really plug him in for Arvin or Rang, and really you're not going to be losing much, but at least with everything besides his scoring. So shout out to Owen for putting together a hell of a season.
Yeah, he's had a great year. Now we have the role player of the year. This is the newest. This is the fresh award. First time giving it away. A person who was on my podium is AJ Clark. AJ Clark is on my podium because it is apparent that he has been the glue in these past 3 years. He's been in the ASL on his respective team. He is the kid doesn't really know what to lose. I praise him all the time. He understands the game so much better than we give him credit for. And in terms of like your second best player, your best draftee, it's essentially the MVP for the draftees. And I think he needs to be in the conversation. So he is on my podium.
Yes, and for mine, I will give a shout out to Carter Brzezinski, who, as much praise as Jack Curtin has earned, the Hatamotos would not be 4-0 if Carter hadn't been the perfect complement, and he has, and he's doing it on both ends. And his IQ just continues to raise, and Jack Curtin probably couldn't be happier with taking Carter at the second overall pick and having him be his first role man. So Carter, shout out Carter.
Yeah, and then that brings us to the rookie of the year. Someone on my podium is none other than Alex Trottier. He was my too early depoy, and I'm really happy that he's making me look smart because he is we'll probably hear his name when it comes to the depoy conversation at the end of the year. But he's definitely on my podium. He's showing up on both ends of the floor. I mean, he's averages 1.5 steals and 1.5 blocks. That's unheard of. So he's on my podium. And definitely we are happy to have him back next year, God willing. And yeah, he's been a great rookie.
Yeah, someone who is on my podium is Campbell Prentice. Obviously we all know who's winning this award, which is why I'm laughing. But Campbell has come into this league. He never subbed once, which is and he wouldn't be able to tell. I said it in a previous podcast, but we don't have enough players like Campbell who play like the old school center like he does. He's good at rebounding. He's good at defending. He has a high IQ on the switches. He's a good communicator for them too, which complements Ian. I think Campbell has been a great addition to the league and a great rookie and has exceeded expectations.
Yeah, so these ladders will definitely be dropped later this week. Stay tuned. But now you understand how we vote for them. So if we cast, on our podium, first place is three votes, second place is 2 votes, third place is 1 vote. So great job. It's with the exception of it's a pretty diverse cast. I mean, you have I'm looking at the ladders right now. There's a few repeating names, but a lot of people out there. So keep it going. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.